Hi, I'm Dianne Panarelli Miller, and I'm from Auburn, Massachusetts, and I've been painting basically my whole life. And I went to the Vespa George College of Art, and I met all my future teachers for the R.H. Gamble Studio Atelier, which is a 5-year year-round program where you learn how to paint from a book all the way up into painting from real life. And it's from 9 to 5, so it's not a matter of being inspired, it's just a matter of being disciplined. And after I went to the atelier, I painted 3 to 5 paintings a day, 5 to 7 days a week for many years after that, and really haven't slowed down that much. So if I seem like I'm painting quickly, it's because I've been painting forever and done a million paintings. So today what I'm going to do is paint the Thaddeus Chapin House in Auburn, Mass. And the first thing I'm going to do is throw on a hat because you really need to block the glare. And where I have this Shade Buddy umbrella, which you can't live without if you're a plein air painter, I don't know how long it's going to last because there's a breeze. So one of the tricks I use while I'm painting is to paint in a pink cap, because when I go around town in that pink hat, people tend to recognize me, and conversations start, and sometimes I sell a painting from there. So you should wear dark clothes and non-reflective, but I've been painting so long that the pink doesn't really affect me at all. Okay, so right now I have my paints all set out. They're like the keys of a piano. They're always in the same spot. I have a warm and a cool of each of the color notes. So if something is in shadow, I'll go for the cooler of the two. And if something is in the warm and is in the sun, I'll use from the warmer of the two. And I'm using titanium white as well. So this is the Boston School palette. And I really haven't switched from that too much. When I do portraits, I'll use the Zorn palette, which has only 4 colors. But this has 9 colors, and I've just about been able to get every color in nature with this palette. Okay, so right now I'm working on a Centurion panel, which is a really nice, the price of all the materials have gone up so much. I find that the Centurion has a beautiful surface on it, and it's really easy to work on. But I also use Mako panels and Da Vinci panels as well. But this Centurion, right now for painting outdoors, is really one of my favorite. Okay, right now you see the sun is going to hit the front of this building very shortly, so it's going to be exciting. And I always note where the sun is going to be and how much time I have, so I'm aware of what's going to happen in the future here. Right now with that red flag, the flag that is shining in the sun of the background there is very interesting. So I always like to take a picture for the before, medium, and after, just in case maybe a truck sits in front of that or something happens and it completely changes. So a lot of times what I like to do is start with a tone background. And I don't do it as much as I used to, but for people that are beginners, they tend to paint on the cool side. So this really helps you to get a little warmth in your painting without any effort at all. I'm using Gamsol, which is a mineral spirit, to soften my paints, but I don't use a lot of it. I only use it really at the beginning. So I'm just going to dip my fan brush with a little bit of red and just kind of put this all over my canvas. So I'm just toning it. You can use brown, you can use really any color you like, but I find that if you're having trouble warming up your paintings, this is really the best way of doing it. And it takes really no effort at all and no time at all. So I'm using some Bounty paper towel, not the cheap brand, because of the texture of it. It's soft without being too crinkly. So I didn't even really need to use a brush to put this down. Sometimes I just dip my paper towel in it and use that instead, so I don't have to dirty a brush. So right now, by the time I get started on this, this is going to be basically dry, so it's not going to have any blending effects on it. Yeah, I have my little portable doggy bags here to hold my trash, and I have everything I need either in my bag or in my car right now to paint outdoors. Okay. So now I'm just going to take a small number 2 brush and my trusty viewfinder, and I'm going to line this square up with the square of my canvas. So I'm looking through the same perspective as my canvas. And then I just bring this forward and backwards, and I ask myself, the first thing I ask myself is, what color do you see the most of? And right now, the color I see the most of is green. So I'm considering it a green and red color harmony. So color harmony is 2 colors that are across each other on the color wheel. One is a primary and the second is a secondary. So it really helps to cut down the amount of questions I have about making the right color. So right now, I'm going to start with my alizarin crimson and my viridian green. They are 2 of my cool color choices on the palette. I like to start with my darks first, and the darks tend to be in the shadows the most. So starting with those 2 colors is going to really be in harmony with the whole scene here. So I like to start off with just a little bit of a map to help me to get that 3-dimensional situation on a 2-dimensional board here. So now I know this is the same width as that, and I have it cut down the middle, so I'm going to bring this forward and backwards until I find the composition I want, and then I'm going to bring my brush up the middle and find out what falls in the middle. So right now that chimney on the far end is going to be right in the middle somewhere. So I'm going to mark a few notes just to give me an idea of where these things land, and then I'll piece those notes together. So once I figure out what is horizontal, vertical, then I'll go to horizontal, vice versa. It doesn't matter where you start. So right now the middle of the windows on the facing building is about halfway. Once I find out what is vertical and horizontal, I go back and I double check and make sure everything is right, and then I'll find out some easy landscapes, easy shapes of the landscape, and put those in. So I'm always double checking that I'm in the right spot. And I see this side comes over here. So until you have enough done, you're simply guessing with as much accuracy as possible. You always have to go back and double check. Because painting is making mistakes and fixing them. Alright, so I'm just double checking I'm in the right spot, and then I see that the bottom of the house where the grass is starts here somewhere. Then I go back and I double check, and I see almost the same space for where the grass ends and the street begins, and then I see this doing about that. Now when it comes to painting old houses, I see that this comes just a little bit more. See, I'm double checking now. I like to pretend that this is a dirt road instead of a paved road. Okay, so now I know kind of how wide the house is going to be. I know where the bottom of the house is going to be. So what I'm seeing here is the slant of the 2 chimneys that are closest to me. And I see over here for these 2 It hits right a little bit above the center mark here. So that's going to be one direction of the chimneys there. Okay, so now I know where this starts here, so that actually comes down there a little bit. Now I can do the same for the direction of the house in the foreground here. So I'm seeing about here. And that comes to about here. So now I know that the front of the house is going to be in this angle right here. If this is where the chimney starts here, I see that this is going to follow the perspective. Okay, so that's right there. So that's doing this. That's doing that. And then this is coming down somewhere, and I'm going to find out where that is. So right now, from where I'm standing, the corner of the house here and the corner of the house here is pretty much level. Okay, so I'm going to go back and double check that. Double check, double check, double check. And I see that this comes up just a little bit and over here. So this kind of is parallel to that. The lines look good. The distance between this and this look pretty good. And then, again, double check where everything is. If you do this first, especially when it comes to architecture, you won't be making some serious mistakes. So that's about here. That does that. That does that. I'm checking all these shapes to make sure they're all right. This comes up about here. This comes about here. And I'm looking at the space between there. So I just want to go back and make sure everything looks right. This might come up a little higher, which means that's going to come up a little higher. And then this is going to here. Now, one way to find out where the center of your building is to draw an X here. And the middle should be right in here in perspective. So there'll be one here. So the window is going to be here. The door is going to be here. Then you have two windows here and two windows here. So that's going to be the perspective there. I have the bush here. There is a little bit of a slant on from here to here. Because to me, eye level is about here. So there's going to be perspective coming here. The vantage points are going to come down a little bit over here. So then there's a window there, one right below it, one right here, and then one right here. And that's all I'm going to do for my drawing. Now I'm going to go in there and I'm going to abstractly put in my shapes. And I'm going to use the biggest brushes that I have. And you can see I have a lot of brushes here. In case I do more than one painting, I can always have brushes that I can take that are clean. Alright, so right now I'm squinting like my life depended on it, and I'm going to put in my darkest darks first. So where I said it's a red and green harmony, I'm going to start with my Viridian green and my alizarin crimson, and I'm just going to put down a color note just to see how it looks. And it's a little bit dark, but I kind of like it, so you're better off starting from something that's too dark than too light, because it's easier to lighten something than it is to darken it once you have some lights in there. So right now that's a good rule of how dark or light something's going to be. Now the light's going to change probably in about 10 minutes. So I'm not going to worry too much about this side of the house. Once the light hits here, it might change things in the background, but again, I'm just trying to fill in my canvas as quickly as possible, and then I can fix my mistakes much easier that way. I don't like to color like a coloring book where you see the lines and then you color it in. I like to color all the values in first. Value is more important than color. So I'm just going to add just a little bit more, a little bit of yellow to that, just to get these values in here. I don't want this too bright. And I'm squinting like my life depended on it at this point here. Not worried about if I'm absolutely correct or not. I'm just trying to fill in my canvas. And now I'm going to do the same over here. I'm going to add a little bit more blue this time, because this is going into the distance. And a teeny bit of white just to cool it down. And I put a note down, and before I keep going with that note, I double check it to make sure it's okay, and right now it looks great. And because I'm using a big flat brush, it's easy for me to cover this space without worrying about details. You want to put the details in at the end. I'm just going to move this over just to here. Okay. So, again, I'm squinting like my life depended on it. I got my darks, my darkest darks in here. And then your colors get brighter as they move towards you. So I'm just going to add, in order to keep your colors bright, you don't want to mix them with its color harmony too much. So there is the shadow there. While I have this color on my brush, I want to see if I can use it anywhere else before I go to the next color. And then I'm going to use this kind of as a shadow over here for when I go and put in my dirt road. I have the color on my brush, so it's not going to hurt me, as long as I keep it rather thin. Put in this color here. And you can see how easily the paint goes over the red without blending in with it too. Okay, so now the next color that I see the most of is this beautiful pinkish purple. So I'm going to start again with my alizarin crimson and viridian green, this time with a little bit more pink than green, and some white. And I'm going to see what color I made there. I don't really like, this is a little bit too pink, but the value is good. So I'm going to add a little bit more green to that. And I like this color for now. I don't know if it's correct or not until I have the whole painting blocked in. I'm just going to add a little yellow just to dull it down because it's just a little bit too bright in there. And the opposite of purple is yellow. So that's going to help me to dull that down just a little bit. So by using the alizarin and the viridian, it gives it kind of a purple hue. So that's why I went in with my yellow just to fix that. So now I have this purple on my brush. Where else can I use it before I go to the next color? And I do see a little bit down in here. It's not going to hurt to have it. It's going to give my painting some unity by throwing this in here. Now I want to go in and paint this, but I don't know what's going to happen to the sun. So I'm going to wait just a little while longer. Now I'm going to start with the brush that I originally started with, which was the alizarin and the viridian. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to that. So brown and gray are neutral colors, and neutral colors are made by excuse me, mixing two color harmonies together. So over here I'm making almost a gray, so that has a little bit more of the cooler green color in there. And if I want to get brown, excuse me, like I do in the roof, I'm going to add a little bit more of the yellow and red in there. But at this point, again, I'm not too concerned about my color being perfect. I'm worried about the value. Again, this is probably a little bit too dark, but I'd rather start off too dark than not dark enough. Okay, now I see this color here, and when I bring my eye over to this chimney here, I see it's about the same value. Now this one is a little bit lighter, but I see some of those colors in there. So again, it's not going to hurt me to put it up here because it's already on my brush. There. Okay, now I'm going to see where else I can use this color before I put it down. This helps me to save time painting because I don't have to go back and mix it later. So I can just double check and see where it might work. I do see it in these windows a little bit, but that's a little too light, but it works for the top parts of those windows there. Now I'm also double checking where these windows fall compared to where this chimney is here. So I do see this moving over just a little bit, which makes sense because that seemed too skinny for me. So I'm always comparing one thing to the next. And I think that this might be a little too high too, but when I go in and get the sky in there, I'll be able to fix it easily. Painting is making mistakes and fixing them, and you don't know if something is right or wrong until you have it all covered. So that's why I like to start my darks and work into my lights and fill the whole canvas at first. So now I'm just going to add a little bit of white to that color that I just used, a little bit more yellow, again to get this brownish tone there. That's too light there. But before I go on to the next color, I just want to see if I can use this color anywhere first. Again, it's one way of getting more color down quickly and using more color in your painting. Plus it forces you to move your eye around the painting so you don't get stuck in one spot. Now I can use a little of this just to lighten this bush down just a hair too. Okay, so I'm squinting, I'm looking all around my painting. I'm going to add a little bit more of that alizarin crimson and vermilion green because it's a red and green harmony. I'm starting from my darks and working into my lights. And beginning everything with those two colors and then adjusting it from there because red is a primary and green has yellow and blue in it. So sometimes the green can be adjusted to get just the value and color you want. So I'm just going to put this in. That's a little bit too dark, but again, it doesn't hurt for me to put that in there because I already had it on my brush. Okay, so now this time I'm going to add more green and yellow with less red, and I'm going to get a little bit more of these beautiful greens that I'm seeing over here. Alrighty. And I can use some of this other tone of green in this grass here, which I know I made too dark. But again, it's so easy to lighten the color once you have it. If you don't have it too thick, I have no worries about going in there and having a mistake there. I'm just double checking the slant here. I have it slanting just a little bit too much. And while I have this color on my brush, I'll shove a little bit of this in a few places as well. Okay, so I think I have all my darks down. I'm not going to work on this area quite yet. If I have enough time, once I have the whole thing done in and it's still in the shadow, I'll go and put it in, but I have a feeling it's not going to. So before I continue, I just want to take my Viva paper towel and press it over the whole thing, because in some areas I did add a little bit too much paint, and when I go over it, I don't want it to blend too much at this point. You want to keep your darks thin and transparent and your lights thick and luxurious, because when your painting is hanging on a wall, the light's going to capture the thickest areas, and if your darks are too thick, then it's going to hit the darks and it's going to make them appear lighter than you intended. So I'm using the Viva paper towel now that has no texture, and it's soft like a tissue, unlike the Bounty. If I try to use this to blend, it's going to fall apart. So that's why I like to have my Bounty as well. So basically what the Viva just did was it slopped up all the thick paint. So now when I go back in here, I'm going to be able to work through it. So now I'm going to go into my lights. All my darks are basically in. Sometimes I forget a few things, but I don't worry about that because it'll be easier to go in afterwards. Okay, so now I'm going to look and I see my darkest darks are what? My darkest lights are what? And that's basically, when you're looking at a scene, the sky is generally the lightest thing. And that's a little bit of warm and cool in there. The next darkest thing is going to be anything that's slanting, like the grass on that hill. Then a flat plane is going to be the lightest thing, and then anything up and down is going to be the darkest. So the greens in that tree, those trees over here, are going to be my darkest greens. So my warm green is yellow ochre. I'm just going to test a little of that. When you see it over here, it doesn't make sense for it to be green. It just, people just can't understand how you can use that. But as you see, once I put this color down here, you can see it's almost perfect. Now, here's a good reason why I like to take a picture of my scene before I take it, just in case this truck pulls up. Because a lot of times when I'm painting in Boston, this happens and they don't leave quickly like a UPS truck does. So if I have it on my camera, at least, you know, if they're there for the rest of the day, I haven't lost my idea. So since I have this color on my brush and it's not as dark as I want it here, I'm going to use it anyway. I'm going to leave a little of that pink shining through as well. Right. Okay, so now I'm going to add a little bit of my cerulean blue to it, because blue and yellow make green. Cerulean blue is my warm blue. I'm going to try it up here. Now I see that it's too dark, what I just made. So I'm going to add a little bit more of my yellow ochre in there. And you can see it's almost perfect. So by knowing what colors to use in my lights and what colors to use in my shadows, it makes it so much easier for me to pick out a color that's going to be pretty correct. So my mistakes are not as big as they would be, and you can work a little bit faster, which is imperative when you're painting outdoors, because the sun moves so quickly. You really need to be kind of fast. So I'm going to use this color everywhere I think I see it to begin with. It's a little bit too dark down in here, but sometimes I like to use these colors just to make my painting a little bit more interesting, and then I can blend it later into the right colors there. So I do see some of this up in here. So I'm going to go back to my yellow ochre now and get a little bit lighter. And I'm not afraid of using a little bit more paint now. Again, I'm going to pretend that there's a little bit of a grass in between here, looking like the ruts of a wagon, just to give it that old-time feeling. Okay, now I see that the green is too green. Green is a secondary color made up of yellow and blue. So right now I'm going to add a little bit of my warm yellow to that, to warm it up a little and to lighten it. and try that in there, which I like. And if that doesn't work, then I might add some white to it. But things as they get closer to you get brighter and warmer. So having the yellow in there and maybe a little bit of cad red medium, it's going to warm this up. So this will feel like it's in front of that, which is going to be in front of these other greens, which I'm going to cool down now and dull down a little bit because things get lighter, duller and cooler as they go into the distance. So you can see I'm almost done filling in my canvas in the first half hour, and this really helps me to see all of my good qualities and bad qualities in the painting. Now, to dull down a painting, you just add its complementary color to it. So this color here is green, the opposite of green is red. So I'm going to take a little red. I'm going to test this out over here because the red makes things warmer. And then I'm going to add a little bit more blue just to cool it down. So instead of having, with my yellow and blue combination, let's go all around. With my yellow and blue combination, by adding white and a little bit more blue than yellow, you can see how cool this is compared to the yellow ochre that's over there. So, and I might use a little bit more of this over here. Now it's a little bit too blue, so I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow to it. Again, you don't just put a color down and keep going with it without double checking it. And again, that's still a little cool over there, so I'm going to add a little bit more of my yellow and orange.
The motorcycles.
Oh yeah. That's plein air painting. You have to learn how to deal with all that. Another is when people come around. For me, because I know what I'm doing, it's easy for me to talk to people and paint, where some people can't do both. I find it the most fun part about painting outdoors is meeting people that come by. So personally, I love it. Okay, so now I have this color on my brush, and I'm just going to add a little white to it to see if I can use it anywhere over here. Again, it's in color harmony, so it's not going to hurt me. And now you can see the light is just starting to hit the front of that building there. And you can see that these are way too tall here, so I'll fix that as well. Okay. So I started with my darkest greens, then I'm going to my lighter colors. All my greens are done. Now I'm going to do the roof. So I'm just taking, again, a little bit more blue and cad red medium to make it kind of a brown. And that's almost perfect in there. I'm squinting. I'm going to add just a teeny bit more white and a little bit more red. Again, if you want to make brown, you mix two of your color harmonies together, green and red in this case, and you add more of the warmer of the two, which would be red. And again, there's yellow in the green, so it might be more yellow and red than blue. Okay? So now that I have that on my brush, I'm going to see where else I can use it before I go to the next color. And I see some of these pretty browns in the grass, but that's a little bit too cool for what I want, so I'm not going to keep going. I am going to try to get the fronts. Okay, and now when I checked it, it's a little too dull. I'm going to add just a little bit of my yellow ochre in there. Okay, and that's not perfect, but I like it. And it's close enough. I'm going to add a little bit more red and yellow ochre to this because it's closer to me and things get warmer. Carol, I brought a chair. You're welcome to sitting. Alright, so now I asked myself, what's the next lightest thing? And the light is starting to change on this house. So I'm kind of excited about how it's going to look. So again, I'm going to take that color that I used up here, and I'm going to add a little bit more white and a little bit more yellow ochre, because it's a dull color right now, and I want to warm it up. I might have to use a little of my cad red and cad yellow instead of the yellow ochre. And this is looking okay. It's a little bit too dark, but I'll work into the lights. See, that's too light. Because I want to fill in my whole canvas so I can get all my relationships right. If I just do one thing at a time, chances are I'm going to get something wrong, and I won't want to change it once I put the time in there. Okay, and that's good enough for now. So the last thing I have to do is the sky. So in this case here, because I'm working with a small palette, I'm going to clean my palette first, because cerulean blue is a really weak color and I don't have a lot of space on my canvas. So a lot of times by cleaning your palette off, you're actually saving time than losing it. It takes me less than a minute to clean off my palette. A lot of people don't like to use it because do this because they'll have to mix their colors again. But color's not one thing that I have to really worry about too much once I get going. Excuse me. Once I get talking, I choke on myself. I'm sorry.
Want some water?
I have some. I have a candy. I think it's a COVID thing, because when I had COVID, I had such a bad cough and I've never gotten rid of it. Now this is a red and green harmony.
What color did you use to?
Cad red medium.
Really?
Sorry. It is. It warms up the painting without any effort at all. So blue is not in the color harmony of red and green. So in order to get that blue sky in harmony, I'm going to add red to it. And where the sky is very, very warm as it goes close to the earth, it gets cooler as it goes into the distance. I like to start with my my alizarin crimson before the cad red medium, because the cad red is so close to orange that it might dull down my cerulean blue. So I like to start it a little bit brighter and bluer than it seems, because I can dull it down or change it very easily. So now that I'm putting this in nice and thick, thick paint goes over thin very easily, so it's not picking up a lot of the paint that I already put down. So now it's very easy for me to go in and repair this, and that's why I don't worry about that too much. And you can see once I start putting in the sky, things are really coming together, because it's really the last thing that I have to do before I go into that front of the house.
And Carol, she did a step where she put paper towel on all of it to take off a layer of paint.
Okay, so I think these are a little bit too high, so I just chopped it off. Simple as that. Add a little bit more white to that. And that's why it's good to make thick puddles rather than thin ones, because you don't have to keep mixing that color over and over. You'll have enough of it. Because when you're painting outside, time is your commodity. And we can see it gets lighter back here. so I can fix my angles. This box is getting old. Oh, it keeps leaning. And you can see the difference. So I'm working towards that value. And I can line this up. This and this should be on the same plane, which they are. So I just use a paper towel, my Bounty this time, just to clean off my brush in case it captures any of the other color. Cerulean blue is the weakest color on the palette, so it gets dirty really easy. So I like to have 2 puddles of cerulean, one for my greens and one for my sky, to keep it clean. Right now I have more blue than red. Again, you can see I put very little red down there and it just really dirtied up that blue. A little bit more white. There we go. I'm just going to cover that piece of tape so it doesn't bother me. And some of that red in the distance that I put down to cover my canvas is actually blending in with this too. But because it's so thin, it's doing it just this tiniest amount. Now, if you squint really hard and look at that red note there, it's almost the same value as the blue, which means that I can mix that red and blue in here because they're the same value, and even yellow ochre to make it a green and red harmony, and then I can have lots of colors in the sky rather than just one color sky, which I'll explain a little bit more when I go into detail. So now that I have more of the sky down, I can see that it's too dark. So rather than drawing the whole thing in wrong, I'm constantly looking at what I'm doing and double checking so I don't have to do it over again for nothing. And you can see now I'm painting thicker because the paint underneath it was thick. I had to paint even thicker, but I'm also blending up on my canvas, which is a lot of fun to do. And I'm also looking where these line up to the windows underneath there. Just double checking. Again, they still feel a little bit too tall. But I'll fix that as I go into more detail. Now the front of the house is starting to get into light. Of course, the clouds are coming now. And that's one of the challenges of plein air painting. And that's why you want to get fast. So I'm just going to take a picture while it's changing, so I have something to refer to when I get home and finish this up. And I'll take another one once the sun comes out again. Okay. Okay, so this is a good time to go back and look at it from a distance. Jiggle my eyes back and forth. I see that the side of the house is way too dark. Again, I'm going to go in with my Viva paper towel. And because I've painted so thickly, I can't fix those mistakes if the paint is too thick. So I'm just going to take some of this paint off. Unfortunately, this is at the end of my roll, so there's some crinkles in it. But Richard Schmid used to do this, just to get some of these happy accidents going on in there. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay. So now I have a good idea of the color that I'm going to need for in here. Again, I'm going to take a clean brush. And because it's light, I'm going to start with my white. And I'm going to add just a teeny bit of yellow ochre and cad red medium in it. That's my warm green and my warm red. I'm going to test it. And it's a little bit too dark, so I'm going to add light, so I'm going to add just a teeny bit of my cerulean blue and just a teeny bit more red and green to it. Now my yellow ochre can actually be like a yellow. I just want to move this over just a little bit here. And until the sun comes out, I'm really not going to know what that looks like. So because I use lots of brushes, I can simply go back to one of the brushes I've already used. But none of them are the color of the windows now. So I'm going to start with my alizarin crimson and viridian green again. A little bit of white. And I'm going to go in and try to find where these windows are again. Again, if you make an X from the corners of the house, that tells you where the center of the house is. So that goes in about there. This here, it falls right under this chimney. And then this goes over here. When it comes to architecture too, I don't like to make it too perfect because then you have to make the whole thing perfect. So I like to make it off kilter just a little bit. Gives it a little bit of a whimsy. Now I have this color on my brush, I might as well get over here too. Which seems a little bit more green to me and blue. And you can see, because I took all the excess paint off, when I put thicker paint over it, doesn't blend, it goes right over it. So that's one of the reasons that you really have to get used to beaver paper towel. And I'm checking the slant of the windows to make sure that I don't have too much of a slant on them. As you can see, I've made them a little bit bigger than I think they are, and there's a reason for that. So now I'm going to go back in, I'm going to add a little bit of white to this color and see what color I end up with, because this is too dark in here. So you can see that color there has a little bit more green in it than red. When I started it was alizarin crimson and viridian green. Now it has a little more of the green in there, which I kind of like. And if I squint really hard, this is almost the same value as the background. This is a little bit lighter. So I can blend some of these colors up in here. And I can fix my shapes very easily too. And that's so much easier than trying to draw it correctly. When it comes to drawing something straight up and down, I simply put my brush down and then I move my body back rather than move my arm. And that helps me to keep straighter. Now I can leave some of that pink in there. So now I have a little bit of pink and green in there, rather it being just that pink color that you see. So I'm using more than one color to make this almost vibrational color rather than just a simple plain color. So it's red and green. I went with the red and I went with the green. Now I might go in with a little bit more blue and a little bit more yellow. Again, to make this color sparkle rather than just be a boring color. Alright, now is the time that I really have to start bringing my eye down and jiggling my eye back and forth to make sure my values are right. And I can still get a little bit lighter. So I'm going back into that color. This time I'm going to add a little bit more yellow. Lemon yellow, because it's my cool color. And that is nice. It's not everywhere, but I do start to see, once I have it down here, I do start to see more of it. So I'm working my way down to the right color. Each time leaving a little bit of the green and red down there. So now I have 3 colors there instead of 2. Okay, now my value's better, but down here, because of the green, I see a little bit more red, so I'm going to have my red the same value as that color I have there, and I'm going to have just a little bit more of the red down here. Over here I see more yellow, and over here I see a little bit more green. So it's one way of taking a plain and making it sparkle. Now I see some of this in here, so while I have it on my brush, I'm going to get the shadow under the roof in, and I do see shadow coming right at the tip of this doorway here, but again I think it's going to change even more than that, so I'm not afraid to put this up here because that's where it's going to end up. And I do see some of these shadows behind the trees as well, and by the door. Okay, I also have this color on my brush, so I want to see where else I can use it before I go to the next color. Alright, and I do see a little bit of it down here. It won't hurt to throw that in there. Where else do I see it? And that's pretty much it. So now I've got my shadows in, we're getting closer. And the trick isn't to finish something when you're working on it. The trick is to make the worst thing the best thing. So now this value is off. So right now the worst thing in the painting is the front of the building. So I was waiting for the light to hit it, but now the clouds are coming. So we'll have to see what to do about that. Because I have experience in painting outdoors, I can kind of guess what's going to happen here. So that's my warm yellow ochre and my warm cad red medium to make this nice sunlit feeling. Because the only time you really see white in a painting is when the sun is shining off a piece of glass or a mirror, and it makes a really white highlight. A white house is generally never white. And you can see I'm fixing my drawing as I go along, and I'm painting a little bit thicker. Now this window has to line up with these windows in perspective. So I want to keep aware of that. And you can see now that I have this in here better, the rest of this is really starting to feel right. The one thing I want to capture before the clouds completely come over is what that flag looks like. You can see I'm making these a little bit wonky, so they're not perfect. And it gives it, again, a little bit of whimsy. And this lines up with that, and this, they're about the same width. And you can see how by measuring one thing to the next, it makes it easier to get everything down pretty correctly. But you have to remain focused, because this is hard. And you can see that red behind there is kind of shining through a little bit and adding a little extra something to this. Now, sometimes I like to add a little of this just to make it feel like it's leading up to the house too, whether it's there or not, while I have it on my brush. And hopefully the sun will come out one more minute so I can figure out what this flag is doing while the house is in the light. I like to put a little of this wherever I might see it. I do like this little screen house, so I'd probably consider putting that in, but very loosely. Again, I'll go back and fix that a little bit. I just want to remind myself that it's there. So right now, with the sun out, the sun is shining through that flag, so the other side of the flag is what would be in light. So I'm going to start this with my cool colors using alizarin crimson and lemon yellow to get the reds of that flag. A little bit more red and a little teeny bit of green just to darken it down a little. And then I can go back with a smaller brush and get the yellow. So this time I'm going to take some lemon yellow, a little bit of that red mixture, and some white. Just a teeny bit of the blue, just to dull it down. And let's see what I've got. And I'm not drawing every stripe on here. I'm just giving you the impression that this is a flag. Okay, now I can go in and find that blue color. So I'll take another brush for it. So I don't want to use the ultramarine blue right out of the jar because it's too blue. It won't go in my harmony. So I'm going to add just a little bit of the red. And a teeny bit of the yellow to dull it down. So now it's a very bluish green instead of blue. And it's a little duller, and that's going to be in harmony there. So again, you don't have to see every star and stripe on the flag to know it's the American flag. So, and that blue is in harmony, so while I have it on my brush, I might see it a little bit in these greens in here. Okay, so right now my whole canvas is covered, and what happens? The clouds are coming over. So I have to make a decision. Is this going to be this going to be a sunny day, or is it going to be a cloudy day? And it's so much prettier with the light. And it doesn't look like it's going to have any light left. Let's see what time it is. So this is 1 hour's work. I'm halfway done. I think I'm going to leave it like it is and use my phone as a guide to finishing this. So I'm not really using my phone so much. I'm using my memory more than my phone to be able to finish this. The one thing I notice when I do look at my phone, which is, in the old days they used to use a retracting glass, which was the opposite of a magnifying glass. It made everything look smaller so you could see your mistakes better. And now that I look at my camera, I see that the house is actually taller. And that's why these ended up looking so high. So I'm going to go back in. Just going to get some detail. Well, you're trying to stay abstract as long as possible while being as exact as possible too. So you can see in my car I have 2 of everything. So in case I forget something, because there's so much to remember as an artist, I always have more in the car. And I just got back from a trip to Greece, and I took my paints, so I'm a little disorganized trying to get all my stuff back in the car after being in the luggage. Okay, so you can see that I took all the excess paint off. Now when I go and fix this, it'll look better. And just by putting this in here, that's going to help. I'm going to add a little of my cooler note to that. And that really does help there too, because we do see some of this shadow coming down over here. Okay, so it took an hour for me to get this down. Now I want to ask myself, what's the biggest mistake? So again, I like to start from my darks and work into my lights, working on the biggest mistakes first. So I'm just going to get a little bit of these darker blues, a little bit of red, teeny bit of yellow, so it's not blue. And now that the clouds are in, I see this being a little bit darker, which I can put down or I don't have to, but I like it. And I can start putting some of these branches in as well. Again, I'm not being super careful about it because I want it to feel artistically done. And over here I'm going to go in a little bit darker. It's a little bit more yellow just to dull this down a little bit because it's in the distance. Now, right now I'm leaving a little bit of a note in between the light and the dark here, so it makes this edge a little bit softer because I don't want to make it too important. I don't want it really, really sharp. I want to save my sharp over here where the light is against the dark. This is a medium color against the dark, so this edge has to be darker than this edge. So by leaving like a medium value in between those two, it really softens that edge down. So again, I'm using this color everywhere before I go to the next color. And I'm not afraid to exaggerate my darks and exaggerate my lights. I'm the god of my own universe, so I can do whatever I want in my painting. So with the experience that I have, I know what's going to make this a little bit more interesting by having maybe a little bit more contrast. Okay. And you can see because I wiped this down, it's very easy for me to go over and make I can fix this up just a little bit without the paint all blending together. I guess I don't need my shade buddy anymore. Now, every artist, I don't care how good or bad they are, tends to lean a building one way to the other. So you have to keep that in mind when you're painting to make sure that you're staying, you're not too wonky here. So because I raised the building now, I'm going to raise these windows here. I have this nice dark note on my brush, so I can go in here and stop playing with those. And that's feeling a lot better right now. So I really want to use the color on my brush in as many places as I can before I move to the next color. And value is more important than color. So if you get the value down right, then you can fix the color later. So I'm squinting really hard, and now that the clouds are all out, I'm trying to see if these appear darker than the darks over here, but they seem about the same. I can fix that later if it doesn't look right too. See, so I save a lot of time painting when I use the color everywhere instead of going to the next color. And it forces me to look all around my painting instead of concentrating on just one thing. So when I'm looking at this, I'm squinting and seeing how dark this gets in comparison, and these are even darker up here. There. Okay, so for me, painting is making mistakes and fixing them, and I try to make this as perfect as possible. Then I get to a point where I'm trying to make these happy mistakes. So once I make it as perfect as I can, then I proceed to kind of mess it up looking for these happy accidents. Always worrying about my values. And now I have to be careful because the clouds are out, to use my memory rather than what I see, because things have changed. And if I had kept this dark like this, it wouldn't have changed that much because it was backlit anyway. But I just think it's so much more interesting with the light on the front. So now the next thing that I see, and you see I'm just going to mess this up just a little, so it's not quite perfect. I like to give the ceiling a little bit of whimsy, not making it perfect. And then my color is getting a little bit lighter as it blends with everything else, so I'm going to just use a little of this under here. Again, I'm moving my body like this rather than my arm, and it helps me to not move my arm so much. You can see that makes a little bit of a difference there. Okay, now that I have this color on my brush, I'm still in the shadows. I'm going to go a little bit pinker now. And I'm going to put these lights in up here. You can see just by using the side of my brush, my arm is leaning on here. It's easy for me to get those in kind of nicely. They might have to get a little bit lighter. And then in here, I might just pretend there's window panes there. And then, while I'm at it, I can do the same here. This is the same color that's on the side of the house, so I can fix that. I can add some of these window panes on there. You don't have to paint exactly what you see. You want to just give the house the impression of what's there, and that gives the viewer something to work at to see the painting right, instead of it being perfect and they say, oh, that's beautiful, get bored and walk away. This way they really have to go, how did she do that? It's by not painting everything that you see. Because the eye can only focus on one thing at a time. So if I'm staring at this flag, the window panes aren't necessarily going to be that important. So you can see basically in the shadows I've used only 3 colors, but a different recipe with those 3 colors. And in the lights I've used the same 3 colors but a warmer version. Again, a different recipe for as I move around the painting. Okay, so right now the windows are no longer the worst thing in the painting. Just going to go in with a bigger brush and kind of play with this just a little bit more. Now I have a little bit more pink on my brush. I'm trying to soften some of these edges. There's more contrast here than here, so I should have sharper edges around my windows than over here. And I'm using a bigger brush because it's easier than using a smaller brush. Generally when I paint outdoors I like to spend 3 hours on a painting. Today I'm only spending 2, so I can't play around quite as much. Okay, now the next thing, now at this point I really want to start getting more accurate as I go along and try to go into the finishing stage. So I'm going to go into my grass right now, again starting with the yellow ochre. I could add just a little bit of white to that because I did see it getting a little bit lighter up here and a little bit more blue. Just make it a little bit greener. And using a nice big brush too, you can also make nice planes with the brush. It fills the spot better. I do want to get this beautiful yellow color over here. Again, this is a little bit duller than what's over there, but I want to keep my bright colors up in here because this is in the distance. Can I use any of this over here? A little bit. It's a little too green. So now I'm kind of thinking about the quality of my brush strokes as well, trying to get them to be a little bit more interesting. Okay, so now I can go back into this grass here. Thinking about which direction the planes are going, so I might have some brush strokes going up to look like it's going up the plane. I can have a little variety in my greens. This time I'm using a little bit more yellow. And the trick isn't to make it perfect. You want to really work on your stroke. Everything is important to make a nice painting. Your composition, your brush strokes, the amount of paint you use, and so on. So again, this is usually my playtime where I just go and experiment with different colors and different strokes and see what I might add to it. Again, the colors here have to be warmer than the colors as they go in the distance, so I might add just a little bit more yellow and red to that green and a little less blue. Now you can see I'm starting to run out of the colors that are in harmony, which if I put enough down to begin with, I wouldn't have to do this. So I always tell my students, nice big puddles so you don't waste time. And look at these nice thick brush strokes. How yummy these look. Oh, thank you. It looks so much better than to go in and do these scratchy lines with a small brush. Yeah, it stinks to have to clean these brushes, but you have plenty of time at night to clean your brushes. You only have 3 hours out here basically before the sun completely changes. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit more yellow and red. Get some of this brighter color in here. I'm going to start down here first because as it blends with my green, it's going to get duller. And then I can go in and put some of these reds up in here. And sometimes you don't see a color. You just have to know what the rules are and experiment. And then once you have the color down, you begin to see it more. So that's one way of learning how to paint color, is even if you don't see it, lay some of the color down, and once you do, you begin to see more of it. Now, red is the warmest color on the palette, so I know I'm going to see a lot of that in the foreground. Blue is the coolest color, so if I see things in the distance, I'm going to go in and add a little bit more blue, and that's going to pull that back. Yes, but that's a little bit too blue, so I'm going to add a little bit of green to it, just to keep it in harmony. Again, that's pulling that back, and plus that red almost looks orange, so it's adding a little bit of a spark of color harmony to it. Now that I have this color on my brush, I can put it in this window, which I see a lot of in there. Where else do I see this color? I see a little bit of it in these reds. There. And I can put a little bit more over here just to send this back into space. So by knowing about color harmony, it really helps you to keep your painting unified, so it doesn't, so certain colors don't feel like they don't work there. Okay. So I'm going to just dull this down a little with white. White is not bad to use. You just got to mix it away, especially in the lights, because it does dull the paintings down. So I'm going to add a little bit more cerulean blue to this, just to dull it down a little bit more, because I'm seeing some of these red hues in the grass. And I want it to be a little bit cooler than what's over here. Again, I'm thinking about my brush strokes, still playing. It's really hard to know exactly what you're doing all the time. Sometimes these colors just pop out at you. Now I have this color on my brush. Now I can go in here and get some of these oranges I'm seeing up in here, which are duller than these down here. And right now, with the sun completely gone, these greens don't feel as green as I have them, but using my memory and my photos, I'm seeing that they're actually, it does look a little bit more like this. And when it comes to trees, the trees are moving, even if it's not windy. They are swaying a little bit. So you don't want to make them with too much of a sharp edge. Now I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow to this, which is my cad yellow, not my yellow ochre. I do want to get some of these. It's just a little bit brighter over here. That looks nice. Okay, so right now that looks better to me. I'm going to go in and paint these ruts in just a little bit more lighter and thicker, because you want your thickest paint in your light areas. And this looks just so much more attractive than just a pavement road. So even though it's not there, I'm the god of my own universe. I just noticed it's a little bit too green. I'm going to add a little bit more pink to it. And dirt roads are never perfect, so I might have a few edges there that are a little bit different. And this all keeps it fun and loose too. And I'm trying to get everything to point to the center of interest, which is really going to be the flag. Okay, now I'm just going to add more white to that color. I'm really going to try to clean this up in here. So I do have to slow down just a little bit. I have my arm leaning on here to keep my hand steady, or I could use a maul stick. And you can see just by cleaning that up, it really pulls this together more. And I don't mind my sharp edges being here, because it's where the most contrast is. And also, if you're painting outdoors all the time, this is where you can do a lot of this cleaning up at home. As long, I mean, when you're out, you really want to concentrate on the color more than the shapes, because you can get the shapes right on your camera, whereas you can't get the colors right on your camera. They tend to be a lot cooler. Now the windows do have to be the same size. So you can see I didn't worry about a lot of the details at the beginning, but this is really starting to come around now. So you really have to kind of trust yourself when almost knowing what you're doing, so you don't put the details in too soon and not get all the values and colors right. Value is the most important thing. If you're going to make a mistake, you don't want to make it there. And by using this this warm and cool of the same three colors, it really makes it easier to remember how you mixed a color to begin with. And the quality of your brush makes a difference too. So you can get the right edges and thickness. Right now, the art supplies I'm finding that the brushes that I liked aren't as good as they used to be. So I'm really trying to search and look for better quality brushes and different varieties. Because even after painting for 40 plus years, I still am always looking for new things, always trying to improve. I still am buying books.
I'm having a problem with the front. I keep wiping them with the paper towels and I'm pulling the hands right out of the brush.
Well, that's probably a cheap brush.
Could be.
Yeah. But don't wash your brushes in hot water either. You have to wash them in cold water. Yeah, if you find that the brush you're using, the bristles are falling all out, chances are it's a cheap brush. But it could be the way that you're cleaning them also. Alright, so right now I still want to put detail on the front of the house, but the sky is really bothering me. So again, I'm going to clean my palette, not worrying about how much paint I'm wasting, because the true waste of paint is when you do a crappy job, because you don't want to do this. It's just part of the process. And you need a break also when you're painting, so cleaning your palette gives you a little time to rest your eyes, which is important because you will lose your focus because this is hard work. And by taking a little break, you can get your focus back. Another trick that I like to use is to look at my painting through a mirror while seeing the view I'm painting, so I can compare, and that gives me a fresh eye too. Okay, so I'm going to go into my blue, and before I do that, I'm just going to fix my flag a little bit, because my flag is the center of interest, so I really want that to shine. And the flag is moving, so you're not going to see every stripe perfectly. One thing I did notice too when I looked in the mirror was this is too dark in here.
We're 1:30 in.
It's 1:30?
Well, no, we're an hour and 30 into the painting.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's actually 2:30.
Yeah, so it's panic time, which
No?
I call the last half hour of painting is panic time. But you really have to learn how to control that when you're painting outside, and just keep working, try to stay focused. I used to be a bartender, so when I was in the weeds, I used to say, one more drink, one more drink, one more drink. But now it's just one more stroke, and it usually gets done. You just can't panic.
Especially if you're in a competition or something and you have to have it done.
Huh?
I said, especially if you're in a competition and you have to
Yeah,
have
but
it
those
done.
people that do the plein air circuit do it all the time. You just can't come out and paint one time in a month and expect to do a great job. And they've got their emotions in check, I'm sure. So again, I'm just going around and I'm fixing one thing at a time. I'll constantly asking myself, what's the worst thing in the painting? What's the worst thing in the painting? And I said it was the sky, but I keep seeing these other things first. So now I'm going to go into the sky. And I want to make it lighter. So over here it's going to be a little bit warmer. So I might even go in with just the tiniest amount of cad red medium. And when I say tiny, I mean like that. And that's probably too much. So I wiped half of that off. Because it's such a weak color, I want to go into it slowly. And I like that. But I'm going to add just a little alizarin crimson to this as well, just so it doesn't dull it down too much. And at this point, I don't want to make mistakes anymore. I just want to finish it. So I have to really, when I go at this point now, I want to make sure I'm right. And you can see just by lightening the sky over there, it looks better. I'm going to keep your brush clean, so keep wiping off if it hits any other part of the painting. Again, this edge can't be as sharp as this edge because these values don't have as much contrast as these do here. So edges are very important. Scrape off some of this excess paint. I'm just getting too much paint down here. And see, I even went through my steeples a little bit because it's just taking the extra paint off. Now another thing I can do is play down here, try and make this a little less perfect. I still have a little time to play. And I might use my paper towel to soften some of these edges here. Again, more interest. You want to make the viewer say, how the hell did they do that?
And you see it really looks nice.
Yeah, because all the edges are a little bit, you know, that you have to wonder how to get these edges. And if you're not willing to play, you're not willing to get your happy mistakes. And that is really the best part of painting, is getting the happy mistakes. So now when I go back into the sky, I can work on it again because it's light enough. I'll get just a teeny bit of pink and red. Now I have a little more variety in the sky. It's not just blue. There's different kinds of reds in there. Center of interest is over here. Now I have a little bit more red on my brush. Whoops. It's that white away. There. So now I have two colors in the sky instead of one. I've warmed up my sky. It's just a little bit too dark. There we go. So the sky's a little bit more interesting because I have two colors there instead of one. press the paint on this, I would just go around and around and around until I painted it. When I had the color on my brush, I'd check it. And see where I can use it. Until there's nothing else that I have to say. And when you have a good brush, you got to remember it because, you know, this brush right now, I have so many brushes and some of them are 2 lines better than others. So you want to remember those brushes. So you can see you don't really need the detail on these windows. Or you do. Depends on what you want to do with it. But the trick is not to get nervous. Because I still have the photograph that I can work on the makeup on. A lot of times when I'm out painting, I sell directly off the easel. So then that's when I get a little nervous, like, oh my god, I gotta make it perfect. Because I find one of my favorite things about painting outside is meeting people. I love that. Especially after COVID and everything. It's so hard to meet people. And art being such a solitary thing, this really helps. So now, I mean, basically I have everything here that I want to do, so a lot of it is just my taste. You know, it doesn't have to look exactly like the book.
No, you put the shadows back on the front?
No. I left it in the light. So that's basically the values that I saw when the lights came on. Which were there for 2 minutes. But you've got to make a decision. You can't chase the light. Bothers me when that happens. Like, what can we be doing?
I didn't even see it.
So I'm really working towards the end right now.
Probably thinks it's spring again.
colors in the grass too. Make that more interesting. And sometimes if my grass doesn't look green enough, it's because the shadows aren't quite dark enough up here. So I'll prove that point. I'll go into my cool greens. And make them a little bit even if you have 5 minutes left and you run out of a color, you've got to put it out. Because this is the most important time. And again, I'm not trying to do things perfectly. A lot of times I tend to start too dark too, so I know that I do that every time, so I want to go back in and lighten it up just a little bit. Again, I want to use this color everywhere before I go to the next color. And it's really hard at this point to fix a lot because the colors are so different now too. So sometimes you gotta know when to hang up the brushes. So another thing I like to do before I finish up, you see I have this duct tape, it's not the size of an easel, but this is a Judson's Gorilla Box, and I love it because it's generally so sturdy, it can hold a nice canvas on it like this. If I duct tape it. Another thing I can do if I want to, take a fan brush teeny bit more blue. It just makes that sky a little bit more vibrant. I could just keep going on, and what I would do if I had more time is I would just keep tightening things up, adding a little bit more color. I do see a lot of green in there, so I might try to find places where I can really pump out the red. Again, if you get the value right, it doesn't matter what color you use. So by getting a little bit more red in there, things don't look quite so green. You can see, even painting upside down, you can see what I'm talking about. All of a sudden your greens are greener. And it adds just a little bit more color. So by doing the upside down too, I'm making it a little bit more abstract. Your warmest colors are in the foreground.
You always use red?
Not always. If I have a really subtle painting, I won't use it. But in this case here, my father would always say, red. And it's the most exciting color in the palette. You can see how it really doesn't hurt. Two complementary colors next to each other, they make each other look better. So I might add just a little touch of this red in there just to bring it a little bit more attention. And that's it.
That is beautiful.
Prettier than the house.
Okay.
So this has all my info on it if you need to know anything.
All right. Well, I was thinking, do you want to say something to the camera? Like you're on Instagram or you have a website or?
You can find me on Facebook at Dianne Panarelli Miller or Instagram with the same name, Dianne Panarelli Miller. I'm on the South Shore. I don't teach anymore. I used to teach more often, but I'm going to be doing a podcast for Plein magazine next week, November 2nd. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be aired, but I'll let you know.
Hey, thank you very much.